Hello ladies and gents, I am Diffin and welcome back to From the Depths Vehicle Designer. In this episode I am going to be building a triple APS turret with ejectors set up correctly in this snake style. What it is, I'm basically going to be rebuilding this particular gun because I want to be increasing the size of the loaders and thought it would be a perfect opportunity to show how I go about constructing a gun like this. So, first of all, I need to place the template down. So this is a 15 meter turret, so let's place that on this here. So we use prefabs a lot in designs like this, and the next prefab I need to do is create one for the loaders themselves. So I am going to be using 8 meter loaders, because this one over there only has 6 meter ones, and I want to be going all the way up to 8 meter for reload speed. And I need to place all the components down. So I place down the shell itself, always use the solid clips in guns like this. Been testing, it's okay to use small, but as soon as you start going into the main ones, you want to be reducing the lag as much as possible. So that is one prefab, so I will capture that prefab. Need to wipe that, go all the way to 8 height, grab that, and then duplicate it like that, and do it for this one as well. And these are going to be the 2 prefabs I use for designing the gun. So the way I do this is I place as many down as possible. I will start with just one here, place a single one down. I'm utilising 3 clip loaders because they have a very high reload rate, and in fact on one of the testers I had, the fire rate was actually lower utilising the two clip loaders, even when I fully filled it out in a gun basically this size, because of the massively increased complexity. It is always something to be aware of when designing guns and utilising APS calculator I showed you in the other video. This, like this, and one of these I've done slightly wrong compared to the other gun. There we go, I have spotted the error. Look, here it is. That block is over the open space, which means if I left it as it is, the gun would not turn. So this needs to be stripped out like so, and I expect the same issues on the other side. Yep. So that's that resolved. That's taken out a couple of loaders, which is a bit unfortunate because it means the fire rate will be low on those guns, but it does mean I can make them a couple of them 4 clip loaders. There we go. I could probably fit in another 2 clip loader here, but it's probably not needed. In fact, I know it's not needed for the following reason. And that is the number of autoloaders I have in this gun. And it goes all the way up to 39 in total. That means I now have 13 autoloaders per gun. And I can easily organise that as well by colour coding them. So all 3 of these guns, the yellow, the blue and the red, all have exactly the same number of loaders and the same number of clips on each of those loaders. They are tuned to fire at exactly the same rate as each other. Now, I need to plan the actual position of all the blocks, which I do have over here, but I'm just going to show you how I do it. This whole row here is going to be full of input feeders, so I can't attach anything along here, even though I'd like to snake the gauge along here. The gauge is going to have to be along this line here. That means that everything on here will connect to the 3 guns. So the line above, because this is going to be a hardened turret, needs to be armor. Armor there. Then there needs to be a gap for the input of the arm, which fits in the middle of the turret around about here. Is that about there, the middle of the turret? Yep. And then the layer of armor there. This particular block is going to be the turret block, so I'd quite like to have another armor layer above that. Then have the gauge snake coming up from here, and that needs to now feed into the gun here like so, to the central point, which again is going to have armor along the top, and 3 blocks I think in the hull, then 1 for the turret cap, and 1 for the actual turret position there. So that means that all those layers will be armor and provide a very high amount of protection to the turret block from any attacks from above. And then there will be the turret well and all that, protecting all these internal components. I'll also probably be arming up the side of the gun itself on a larger block as well, to ensure that these autoloaders do not get destroyed. Okay, so now I need to actually start working with the guns themselves. So let's create the 3 firing pieces, and so now I can easily work with the gauge cooling units and that going down. So put them all on hotkeys, make it easy to work with, and not just press the correct button. And now start working my way down the hull. So like that. Oops, and that's why you have to be careful, because sometimes you accidentally chop off the whole gun. It happens. The gauge increaser can't actually connect to here, so I'm actually going to have to place the block like so, otherwise it won't connect to the gun itself. There we go, and now I can place a cooling unit there to connect the blue loaders in. Similarly, I need to do for the red and yellow turrets, so just pipe the cooling down like this, and this time come outwards. There are many ways to do this, and it's really just trying to maximize the way you have space. So what I've done here is, on this one I was able to, the blue gun, I was able to connect all of the autoloaders with the actual gauge snake. In the red and yellow, see, I've gone in between the two, and so having to have a few of these, but limiting the number I actually have to connect it with. Then come round and manage to connect these up with the gauge snake. And the other thing this gives me is a lot of space along here, which I can put recoil dampeners along. Because recoil dampeners do take up a fair amount of space, and just placing it along like this means I have all this wonderful space to work with and reduce the recoil of this gun massively. So I can just continue gauge snake along like this, across, and across like so, and I've unfortunately made a little bit of a mistake here. I need to just bring it forward one. The reason it's a mistake is that now I can bring the snake this way and connect the blocks, whereas before it wouldn't allow me to do that because there's null space here. I have to leave that empty. Next, just going to delete a load of these connectors. They are not needed. What I do have up on this layer is much more space for cooling systems. So I can actually place this along here and have all this additional cooling for these guns. Whereas on down here, I have a lot more space for the central gun because I've given it that space. Whereas on the top layer, the central gun is pretty much trapped in between here and having a few coolers along there. And then these outer ones can spread out as much as they like, giving me as much cooling as I require for this armament. I've just adjusted the position of the firing pieces. This is to make it a little bit more interesting aesthetically. I have a plan, actually a prefab of the turret which I'm going to be placing on here. So I need to check before I add on the barrels. I need to see how long the barrels I'm going to be using are. So this is the shell I am going to be utilising in the gun. It's primarily a high explosive warhead, though it will also be a APS gun. So it's a 400mm shell. It's only going to be 5 meters long, so you may be wondering why I am utilising an 8-meter loader. That's because an 8-meter loader has a complexity multiplier bar of 0.35 compared to the 0.41 of the 6-meter loader. This gives me a bonus in rate of fire and reload rate for this gun. If I wanted to, I could add more gunpowder casings to increase the velocity of this round. The reason I am not doing that though is I would like this round to have a fairly short length of barrel. I find going much beyond 20 meters in barrel length looks really silly. As to the round itself, the round has the maximum explosion radius, 22 meters, so the full 11 meter radius is being damaged to the full amount, which is brilliant. I have an inertial fuse, which means that any shields will not, if they try and bounce the round, it will detonate on the surface, causing superficial damage to the surface. Then have a penetration depth fuse. This is set to detonate around about 3-4 meters inside the hull. I'm not utilising any particular kinetic warhead, with just using a AP capped head. Nothing very special about that. Really not using a composite is lose a lot of kinetic damage for only a small amount of AP value, whereas the AP capped head has a very large amount of kinetic damage associated with it. The plan here is that for a lot of things it's going to be a high explosive warhead, just to this large amount of explosives damage in a big salvo. It's going to be firing around about 50 RPM, and that will do a lot of damage. Against some lighter hulls though, the actual penetration depth fuse will occur. It will break through the first couple of layers of metal or wooden armour and detonate internally, which can cause significantly more damage, particularly on something like a turret cap, because the turret caps around about here, or even like a turret well, if I have a meter of armour in front of here, the shell will penetrate straight in through 1 meter of armour and then detonate. And in this case, it will detonate in the middle of the turret, instantly destroying it. And that's the power of APS. It is definitely weak compared to some other rounds, like inertial frag will certainly do more damage. But this is something a little bit different, and when it functions and completely detonates all the turrets of a battleship, it's glorious. So I just need to extend the barrel now, so I need a 23 length barrel, so I've got the mantlet, so now I need to add another 22 on, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down like thus, and now need to add on the gauge increases. Don't need to add on all gauge, maximum number of gauge increases is only going to 400mm, so just need to wait until it goes up. So So one more should do it. Yep, 402. Excellent. So you may be wondering how I count up the coolers. I do it physically by counting up individual coolers. The other way of doing it is by actually firing the gun. So I'm just going to go over to this one, because this one is loaded. And I fire it. So now, it shows me the cooldown. I can then check this cooldown against the APS calculator and just go through and add numbers of coolers onto that value and see how much the cooldown is. So say I had one cooler less on this gun, and fire again. See, the cooldown is increased by, it's now 1.23 seconds, whereas the others are 1.13. So I know that this gun is missing a cooler or more. So just add it. So if I just add the cooler back on, and then refire the gun, like that, and I shot the aim barrel off. Well done. Excellent. So now the cooldown is back to the same, so all three of these guns are now identical, and they all have an absolutely colossal recoil force. Hence, the space to fit in a ton of recoil dampeners. Here, I've just added in all the loaders, one onto each of the clips, and added it onto the autoloader itself at the moment. That's for the moment. I haven't done that just yet because I need to add on the autoloaders at the bottom and the inputs on the bottom. So the way I do that is I've stripped off all the armour here. That's because I am going to be arming it up and figuring that out. But I need to grab a massive prefab, so like height 30 or something. And this is a huge prefab which I used on the other gun when I was designing that. So prefab the entire system, and now turn upside down. So there we go, placed the gun upside down. Unfortunately the actual mantlets have broken off, so because they're a large mantlet, I'll quickly add one of them on, because when I prefab this again to put it back on the actual turret base, it will stop functioning and, well, the barrels will fall off, which would be most unfortunate. What I do need to do, I need to add on some actual beamwork here to protect all these components. So, and that is where the spin block is going to be. So again, just a wooden block there to distinguish where it is. Then I think a load of heavy armour around it would be probably a good idea, not actual beams. AI can now go in place. Place that, the failsafe there. And then the actual receiver. Place that on this side. There we go. So that's now in place. Delete that. And this heavy armor gives now a very strong protection to the AI and the spin block itself. The AI will be fully protected from actual EMP, because the EMP can't transmit through the turret block to get to it from here, and all the way around there's this mass of heavy armor which will act as a surge protector. So the AI will never really get destroyed unless it's hit by an absolutely colossal amount of EMP, which could happen, I guess. However, we are now on to the business end of the ejectors. So the ejector needs to sit around the gun like so, and each autoloader itself will need one ejector. So it's always best to have some sort of pattern in mind while doing this, because all of these are going to be shown out the bottom of the gun, and you want to ensure that they are armoured up as much as possible, because if these get destroyed then they vent all the shells in the autoloader itself, which is what you want if you get hit by a damage, but you don't want like a small amount of, like a small fragmentation or something to set off all your loaders. Space in between though, on all these clips, is going to be our input feeders. Any missing? Yes, that one there, that one there. And that should be all the input feeders on. Yes, it is. Good. Next thing we need to do with this gun is armour it up. So the base gun is a 15mm turret, so in order to armour it up we need to go one block larger in all directions, which is the 70mm turret. So place that down here. That means that all of this white area needs to go down and be armour. The next thing I want to be able to do is armour up the base of the turret here. I'm going to use a template to do that, but first of all, that's this template here. First of all, I'm going to place little wooden blocks over each of these outputs. That's to actually indicate where they all are. If I don't do this, then it will be very easy to build over them and not know where they all are. Which means that when the gun is detonated, it will detonate against the hull and things will explode, and the whole point of having a properly set up ejector system will be negated. So there we go, all of the ejectors now have a wooden block over the top, and now I place the actual larger prefab. So this is the 19 diameter prefab, so this is the area of the detailing, which is going to cover the cap here. And this will just allow me to position it actually on the hull and hide it more efficiently, because it can be hidden within the larger area here. And the reason this is important is that I can't just go up to this bar here, otherwise I won't be able to rotate it easily underneath the hull if I want to armour it, and I do want to armour it with the main hull. I do think that's an important distinction. So it's going to cover up all the holes, but it won't fully cover the actual base of the turret cap itself. Or the turret, not turret cap, the actual turret well. And that's fine, it's just I do need to be aware of that it won't be able to cover it, and plan accordingly. So we've got the basic shape now organised. You can see it's a little bit of a couple of notches, but I've left them like that and evened them up. So it looks more of a design rather than a necessity to allow it to rotate within the turret well itself. I want to have all this armour set up at the base so that I can now do a detonation test. I can fill this full of ammunition and then detonate the clips and ensure that all the ejectors work correctly, because if they don't, it makes a very, very, very big hole in the hull. And that is why I'm going to be testing it like this. If I didn't test it like this, I built all the guns, spent all the time, then I could end up in an extremely sticky situation and have to rebuild the entire gun once more. There we go, I have just prefabbed the entire gun. And now let's put a actual arm to put the gun on. And because this is going to be a detonation test, I need to make sure it's outside of the actual testing apparatus, because otherwise, when it's detonated, all those shells will fly down and annihilate the fortress itself. And just place it located on the block itself. And as you can see, I can line this up nicely because of the locations I put with the heavy armor. So, down. While I'm waiting for the guns to load, I'm going to do the very important thing, and that is save it. I need to save this because I'm going to be blowing this up, and I don't want to have to rebuild it from scratch or wait for my avatar to repair it, because it just takes ages. Just destroying it, reloading it, fine, brilliant. Okay, the gun is now fully loaded, and I can test. So I'll start off with just an impact attack. So I shoot it. Bang! Shells are launched down. No problem at all. Let's do a little bit more. It seems a small detonation. Shells are ejected. No problem whatsoever. Let's try an explosive one. So, likely to break things. So that, some of the components break around the base. Armor's darkening. A massive amounts. Say we got hit right in the base. Big explosion. So it seems that something did detonate there, but that was on a critical amount of explosions. But the entire gun didn't go up. The actual gun, the turret block, is still connected, so this won't create a hole in the top of my ship, which makes it very vulnerable. Yes, the entire bottom has been blown out, but the turret cap will still be there, still covering the hole in the top of my ship. So any artillery shells coming from above still have this turret cap and all its armour to get through to the important components. It's just the base can get blown out. So I'm just going to do that detonation test again, because I was a bit intrigued as to why the whole thing blew up. It seemed to occur at the front, but that could have just been where I hit, so... No, large explosion there, didn't seem to detonate things. What might have happened actually is the ejector gets destroyed, then I think if I shoot it again... Yes! That's what happened. The ejector was destroyed, so it ejected the shells, but due to there still being some input loaders at the top, which are now falling apart, they added in a new shell into the recently vented clips. So when the next attack hit, it caused a chain detonation across the whole turret. So there is that weakness with regards to the ejectors. There we have it. It works well enough for what this is aimed for. This is to prevent a single large hit from taking out the whole of the gun, or even a small hit. A small, just a standard like impact or AP round penetrating through the hull, destroying the entire gun easily. This requires several hits consistently across the gun to ensure its total destruction, or a very high power APHG round going in the middle and exploding. That will take it out as well. Now comes the task of rearmoring the whole thing. So just go back onto it, go to the blocks, metal beams, and yes, just now arm the whole thing up in a skin of metal, going over all the existing blocks, like so. Oh, there's one thing I've forgotten to do, and that is add the actual advanced coolers, the hydraulic recoil dampers. So let's quickly add the... What I will do though is add in the ones internally here first. I need to now shrink the blocks because of all the additional space I've used, and place those on like so. $65k is a pretty small amount of recoil, and if I, rather than using these, if I do just go to the 4-meter ones, what is that like? Still considerably lower than the central gun itself, so I think I'll leave it like that. I don't need to have too much of a small recoil. This is being good to be utilised on a very large battleship. So there we go. I have armoured up the actual cap, the undercap itself. I'm not entirely sure what to call it. And I don't think it doesn't need to be a solid, super heavy lump of metal. This is pretty heavy and everything is well protected. And it does mean that a fair amount means it can rotate easily. The thing is with this is that as it rotates, it will expose the arm. So I will actually go all the way around and have at least one layer of additional metal going around like so. Just to add that little bit extra protection to the rotating arm itself. I may find during combat that I need additional layers of metal around this top section. It's just I haven't utilised one of these in anger yet. I've only used them in the actual designer mode. Like many of my designs, I have a turret cap I have made earlier, and this is going to be sitting on here, like so. We'll need to adjust it since this was for a railgun, and this is not a railgun. There we go, I've now added on the mantlets. In fact, I want to do the mantlet because these will aim downwards and will actually glitch slightly through the hull, which I don't really want. So I'm just going to use the elevation, make it a little bit less glitchy looking, I guess. There we go, that's the AA mantlet in place. Though it seems to be slightly off. I should just replace the prefab. I think I did something wrong with its positioning. Let's place that like so. Yes, I did. I put some of the components in the wrong location. So that would explain why the AA mantlets were looking a little bit funky, because they were one block too far back. So now strip it out again. There's no issue though. There we go. The turret cap is in position, though now the barrels are far too short, so I need to re-lengthen those. There we have it. The gun is, in fact, completed. The turret cap is maybe a little bit small, but I will have to adjust that on the ship. I'm just thinking compared to the actual gun itself, it seems a little bit small, just perched on the top there. But when it's hidden in the hull, that might all be disguised. This should survive a considerable amount of punishment because it's going to be within a turret well. This won't have to be armoured so heavily because any damage which passes through, so like fragmentation or heat rounds, they will bounce through, and then once they break through the well, they will then hit this armour. And it's always better to, where possible, armour up the turret itself due to the way sub-objects are handled in From the Depths. So although this looks like it is completely flush, the game treats this as a gap between. I can actually place blocks in there. It won't turn properly, but I can actually clip things into that. And that causes issues with certain weapons. So, for example, a heat round, if it enters the block from this direction here and goes through, when it exits here, it will create the heat fragment particulates because it's come out to an air pocket, and they will fly out, and if I didn't have the gun armoured, it would hit the clips and detonate them. With the armour here, this will take a considerable beating before the gun will actually succumb to damage. So the gun has a turning speed of only 12 degrees per second. This is very, very slow, but will actually still turn on its target fairly quickly. It's not designed for turning on a tiny little thing. It's a primary battle cannon for long-range engagements, and so a little bit slow on the turn isn't too bad, because as soon as it's locked on a target, it will be firing at that target until they are defeated. I've just tuned the gun, I needed to adjust the coolers slightly. I had to remove a cooler from each gun because it was up slightly too high. So just redo it. It's now 1.13 again. The recoil force is now right down. Inaccuracy, a touch high for my liking, but again, high explosive bombardment, inaccurate shells are pretty good at that. And each gun fires at 53 rounds per minute. So let's see what a bombardment of this sound looks like. There we go. 3 shells being fired at a good pace. Fairly accurately and pretty deadly. To confirm the deadliness, I'm going to spawn in a bastion. Not a bastion, a bulwark. A bulwark, big, godly design. And pretty good to test against since it's high armor and high shields and does a rather large amount of damage. You can see there, the crams fire. And here we go. There we go. See there, those cram cannons were... The shell went in and detonated inside the cram cannon itself. There we go, again, inside the cram cannon, disabling it completely. Again there, that was a bit of a surface detonation. And I appear to have been destroyed. No, it's just big explosions on both parties. So on the surface, the explosions go off, doing huge amounts there. But as soon as it actually enters inside the turret, a good hit will pretty much disable it. These are bouncing off the shields, but eventually they break through shields and this thing is disabled. Single gun, admittedly, is being human controlled, which makes it vastly more effective than an AI control because I sniped out the gun turrets rather than aiming for the AI or such. And in fact, this gun would probably benefit from no aim point. Because if it went for the aim point, it would always aim for the same location. And say the AI is too deep within the hull, it will aim and detonate again and again in that same location and not do that much damage. Whereas spreading the hits out across the hull, much like what I'm doing with manual control, is causing absolutely horrific amounts of damage. Some damage has been sustained, as you can see here, some blocks have been taken off, but the gun is fine. The Fortress, on the other hand, took a big hit of damage, but the gun didn't detonate. Whoa, and I can't see a thing now. So there we have it. That's how I go about designing one of these S-shaped ejector weapons for a main battleship. Hopefully the information has been useful to you and you have learned something from it. Thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. But until then, I'm out. Goodbye.